Hey, so I wrapped up the install on your Saberforge Bane MK2. It's installed with Proffie v3.9, as well as set up for Neopixel. So here's your Bane with the shrouds in a chrome finish. So you can already kind of see some fingerprints there. Just gonna wipe it with a microfiber cloth. So chrome finish with black anodized body here. We have our two switches. We got our red main switch up there and the black auxiliary switch. And then up here you've got the chrome blade plug from Saberforge. So to access the internals for the Saber, just unscrew the pommel. It might be a little bit tight that way, just because we do want the chassis to be a little bit tighter to interface the main chassis with the poker pin connectors. So just loosening that. We have our curved chassis in here. So here's chassis, it just kind of slides completely out. We've got our Proffie v3.9 there. We've got a protected or removable 18650 holder here. We've got our 7-rail chassis connector, which interfaces with the switches, the two switches on the hilts, as well as the Neopixel connector. And then down here we have our 28mm bass speaker. So let's put a battery in here. This chassis takes a protected 18650 battery, preferably a high discharge type. I like to stick with the Key Power branded ones. So this is just a Key Power branded battery that I've rewrapped in a red battery wrap. So the battery holder here is marked negative on the side there, positive over there. The spring side is the negative side, and the kind of button side is the positive. Also, the kind of sides of the negative end of the battery holder have this lip here. That's to help kind of hold the battery a little bit tighter once it's in the battery holder. So to insert the battery, I like doing the negative side first. So the flat side towards the spring. Slide that in, compress the spring, and then slide it in the positive end. So that accidentally turned on with swing on. So to remove the battery, I like to kind of dig my fingernail into the positive end, compress the spring, and then just wedge it out a little bit. And then from there you can just pull the battery out. So putting that back in. Also another thing is with the awkward kind of curvature to the chassis, it might be a little bit harder to get to the SD card. So if you need to get to the SD card, let me just remove the battery. I would suggest just lifting the board up a little bit, like that. Removing the SD card, making the changes, the sound font changes that you need to make, put it back in, and then just push the Proffieboard back into its slot. I'm also going to be including a angled micro USB connector. So to insert the chassis into the hilts, we want to face the connector side towards the hilts. That way it interfaces with the switches as well as the Neopixel connector. And then you just slide it in based on the curve of the hilts. And then once you get about here, you're going to feel some kind of springiness to it. Those are the poker pins making contact with the main chassis. So to completely lock in the chassis, just screw in the pommel. And about here, you're gonna feel some friction. You want to tighten it all the way. That way it fully engages the pins. And when you're swinging it around, the pins don't come loose or disconnect from the flat connector. So there it is, connected to the switches as well as the Neopixel connector up there. Got a blaster block. Got action swings. And smooth swing. Flash on flash. And lock up. So I've also configured swing on, as well as twist off. Let's put a blade in here. So before you want to put the blade in, you want to loosen up the blade retention screw up here. There's an 832 retention screw. Remove the blade plug. Then there's your illuminated Neopixel connector in there. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to have a short, kind of like dagger Neopixel blade. So when inserting the blade, this is a 1-inch diameter blade. You want to insert it and make sure that the blade is fully seated and making contact with the pins in the Neopixel connector. So with the Neopixel connector I'm using, I have another pin set up for blade detection, so that when the blade is fully inserted, it's going to short that extra pin to ground and is able to kind of detect if a blade is inserted and make that sound. And then when you remove it, it's going to make another sound. So those sound files you can change on the SD card. It's called blade insert and blade remove, I believe. Make sure the blade is fully seated and tighten it just enough to hold the blade in place. You don't want to leave a giant dent on it. So currently I have about 5 fonts loaded on there. They're just free fonts from Kyberphonic based off of the Galaxy's Edge Sabers.
White. Blue. Green.
That's the blade plug.
Yellow. Purple. Red.
So going back to red. So there's the Saber. In terms of the config itself, the Proffie config, because the board is kind of at an angle, I do have a specific define in there to kind of define the angle or the rotational orientation of the Proffieboard itself. So I'm going to send the config for that to you. That way, if you want to start making changes to Saber, you can start based off of that. The config is also loaded onto the SD card in case you lose it. So yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'll get this sent over to you as soon as possible, and I'll get this Saber packaged up and ready to go home. Thank you.